It was fun. It was a little rough golf-wise, but had a great group, and it was good seeing all the Bengal fans out there. Heard a lot of hoo days, but no, it was a. I mean, how could it not be fun out of a place like this? And played with LT, who you just had on, and Greg Olson, and then Pat Perez was amazing.
LT said the rough was a little rough, so to speak.
I'm going to go home and put some ice packs on my wrists. I tell you what, it was deep. It was you had to almost step on your ball to find it. It was that deep.
Now I know that you play in a lot of charity events and from time to time. When you're playing at something like this and everybody's watching you, is it much harder than going out on a Saturday on a municipal course where no one's there? You know what?
I'd experienced something like this a few years ago, and my knees were knocking. Today it wasn't as bad, but still, you think about all the people kind of lining the fairways and the green. And I had one incident. There was a close group on one of the greens, and I pushed one. I'm going, oh no, it's going towards them, and it hit, and it put me about 20 feet from the pin. I walked up just to make sure everybody was okay, and they're all giving me a hard time. And the guy grabs a bottle from under his chair and says, I think you need to have this. My ball actually hit the bottle. and bounced. First time ever. So I'm carrying an empty bottle that helped me get on the green.
Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
Exactly.
I want to ask you about the Bengals. We are very close to Ohio State here. They drafted a couple of Buckeyes, including Billy Price in the first round at a position that you know very well, center or guard or wherever he's going to play. How difficult is the transition? And you went through it from USC to the NFL, for an offensive lineman to go from college to the NFL. And how do you think Billy will be able to handle that?
I'm excited about the draft pick, first of all. An excellent football player, was a need of ours. The adjustment and how difficult, it depends on the coach. Depends on how they develop the guy. I mean, it's totally, a different level of play. But, I had the opportunity at USC to play for a great offensive line coach. Then I get to Cincinnati, and we had a young line coach who was in his first year from college, but the guy was amazing. Ends up coaching, 30 years in the NFL, being one of the top coaches ever coached, but just a technical master. And so, even being the number one pick for myself and coming out, I had a guy that really brought me along and taught me a lot. And I think that's the key. That'll be the key for Billy Price. And that's one area that I'm excited. Not only that they have him, Cordy Glenn coming over for Buffalo, but they have a new offensive line coach. I mean, the guy, I've already heard rumblings from the players that, maybe we're working a little too hard and stuff. And I'm thinking, wait, this is football. You got to – but the guy is in that lineage of, Jim McNally and Bill Callahan from the Redskins. You talk about head coaching trees, coaching trees. Well, you got that offensive line, thing where, Jim McNally and Bill Callahan and Jim McNally, and then now Frank Pollock's kind of a Bill Callahan guy. And I talked to Jake Fisher, who's at the Bengals, the tackle we took 3 years ago, and he texted me after the first meeting with Coach Pollock, and he said, Anthony, you would love this guy. You would love what he's teaching. And so he's pretty excited about what's going on there.
So that's the good news, right? Because last year the challenge was the offensive line.
Right.
Couldn't run the ball consistently. Obviously, Andy Dalton had an off year. So now knowing that we're bolstering the offensive line, we got the new coach in, what's your expectation for the offense this year?
You know what? I feel it can be back to where it was prior to the last couple of years. I think – look at their weapons. If we, with A.J. Green and, we got a, wide receiver that we don't know anything about as a number one pick. If Tyler Eifert can stay healthy, our running backs, there's weapons there. So I think if the offensive line can step it up, I think we can be productive once again as an offense and run the ball, be physical running the football. I think that's one thing that they're really working on. There's several of us offensive linemen that still live in town, and Dave Lapham, who does the radio for the Bengals. I played next to Lap for 4 years, and we were doing a roundtable after a golf tournament. We talked about how they're getting back to punching guys and using hands and not catching guys. And I said, guys, you think that came from accepting blows or punching guys? We all had a good laugh.
He's holding up his, left hand. And
left hand and the little pinky does a 90 degrees out.
Pointed downward, yes.
So, I think the offense can get back to where they need to be. Score a lot of points.
I want to ask you, too, Sam Hubbard on the defensive line drafted a Cincinnati kid. That's got to be awesome for him.
I tell you what, it's got to be exciting. Cincinnati Moeller, my son played at Moeller, so, he's playing right there in his backyard, and it does have to be exciting to be drafted by an NFL football team and to come home where your family is there. And I'm excited for Sam, and see what he can add to that defensive line. And they got some pretty decent players. They're getting up in age a little bit, but I think they can still bring it.
Visiting with Anthony Munoz, NFL Hall of Famer, former NFL Man of the Year. He was here at the Pro-Am today playing, brought to you by Nationwide Insurance. I want to ask you, just from, you've always been a guy when you played and after that's been involved in the community. LT, obviously, Greg Olson, you guys all have. How important is that, and has that been to you, to not just be a football player and that's the end of it, but to make an impact beyond that?
I think it's very important. I look at my life and I look where I grew up in Southern California. My mom raising 5 kids by herself. But then I look at those organizations and individuals that poured into our lives to give us opportunities to play baseball or football. And so not only is it important to give back in the community that you played in, but across the country. But then as I've gotten older, it's like, it's a matter of honoring those that poured into your life. Mm-hmm. You're kind of, following in that legacy of the high school baseball coach that I had, or that teacher I had in school. That, so it's very important. So when you talk about Nationwide, you talk about the Walter Payton Man of the Year, and you had 3 former winners out here playing. It makes you feel good, but to be able to play in a golf tournament like this, at a golf course like this, but then you really look at what it's all about, and it's the individuals that are being impacted by companies like Nationwide that give a ton of money to the community to make sure they have an impact. It means quite a bit. In that Walter Payton Man of the Year trophy that sits up there with the several other awards that I have, you look at that and you say, man, that's what life's all about. It's what you give back.
Now, I'd love to get your opinion on football today. I know your son played at a very high level. Yeah. I've got 3 young boys that play. We're learning a lot more about football in regards to concussion. Mm-hmm. So what's your opinion there? If your son was restarting today, so let's say he was in the 5th grade, would he play tackle football?
Tackle football is not for everybody. Knowing Michael's personality, he would play again, and I'd be okay with it. People ask me that all the time, and they say, what's the key? I think you can't totally eliminate the use of the head, but I think a lot of it lies on the shoulders of coaches. I still believe if you teach fundamentally sound technique, it's going to help out tremendously. Like I said, it's not going to eliminate it, but I believe it'll lower the risk. I played 13 years in the NFL. Of course, I couldn't avoid not using my head, but it was very little that I used my head. For me as an offensive lineman, that put me in a bad position to use my head. Guys in high school and college always looked at the paint, the opposing paint on the helmet and gashes.
Yep.
I never had those gashes in paint because I used my hands and my shoulders, and I always wanted to be technically sound. So, again, to your point, my son would probably, and I'd have no problem with it. But I think coaching has a big deal to do with it.
Stan, is your proposal.
Yeah.
He thinks that youth football coaches should be mandated to. They just had a free tackling clinic at Ohio State that Alex Grinch, the co-defensive coordinator, and Coach Meyer put on, inviting youth coaches to learn how to tackle. And that's Stan's big thing, is they ought to mandate for youth coaches to go to a clinic like that and kind of get certified.
I totally agree with
they're
that.
teaching the right way.
Have you ever watched the Seattle Seahawks tackling video?
The hawk tackling, yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, how great is that?
It's perfect.
I mean, eliminates the head, shoulders. I mean, and not only do they say, okay, you can do it in shorts and T-shirts, and here's how you do it, but then they integrate, game video into it. I mean, you see these defensive backs taking big running backs down quickly. Mm-hmm. And it's, so that's one thing I always talk about, that you're right. Coaches should go and learn clinics and watch these videos and, make sure that they're teaching the correct things.
Because, see, there's a push nationally to eliminate tackle football before you're 12 years old. Mm-hmm. And so I was talking with the athletic director here at Ohio State, Gene Smith, and I said what you should do is get the NFL to invest in clinics all across the country, use the universities to do it, and mandate all youth and high school coaches have to attend. And you teach 2 things. You teach tackling and blocking. Yeah. Because the reality is, if you don't teach that, it doesn't matter if they start at 12. If the bad habits are still taught, you're going to still have those same issues.
I agree. I mean, I went to a junior high football game last year. A good friend of mine has a son, 12 years old, and he's playing tight end and defensive end. The kid's a wrestler, and I don't think I saw him use his head once. He would come out of a stance, and he would just, boom, extend his arms and grab the other player. And I'm thinking, I'd rather have a jammed thumb than knock in the head.
Exactly.
And I mean, that somebody's working with them with that technique. Tight end, defensive end, and not one. Even when he's making a tackle, he's twisting the guy down, thinking you should use this 12-year-old kid as an example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, Anthony, this has been a blast.
Well, thank you.
Really appreciate it. Glad you had a great time, and thanks for stopping by and joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. All right, man.